Really nice to be here, and thank you for Lone Wolves for organizing this. I am a big proponent of the work that you all do. I think it is an essential community to be a part of, especially now with so many kind of layoffs going on around the music industry. It's a tough time, and there's strength in community. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in all the bullshit that we see online and spiral. I know I certainly like doom scroll like there's no tomorrow, and sometimes I feel like there's no tomorrow when I'm doom scrolling. Um, but being able to be a part of Lone Wolves and surround myself with great people who are all amazingly talented people from our industry, that because our industry is the way it is, have found themselves either without work or pivoting to do something different. And it's just really nice to be able to have conversations with people that allow us to be authentically true to who we are. And so thank you to Lauren and Nicole and Akeem especially, because it was Akeem who brought me in. But Lauren and Nicole have been incredibly welcoming for me, and so I am really honored to be here today, being able to do this. So I am going to share my screen, and I will give one slight kind of preamble, which is I don't know how long this is going to last. And I say that in um in a way that sounds like I haven't actually done a dry run of this, and that's not true at all. I have done a dry run. But there is a kind of live demo section in the middle of it where I will live vibe code a platform. And one thing I have learned with vibe coding along the way is sometimes it will take 5 minutes and sometimes it will take a lot longer. This shouldn't take so long because it's not a hugely complicated thing that I'm going to be building. Um, but this could be 45 minutes or it could be an hour and a half. That's the long-winded way of saying that. So bear with me. And there's a section for questions kind of towards the end. So if you could hold your questions until then, that would be great. Because I'm probably not going to be living in the comments like I normally would be on a Zoom, just because I'm running through this presentation. So let us begin. I am Eric Mackay. I am the founder of a couple of different companies. One called Imber, which is a tech company that builds solutions for songwriters to empower them to manage their own careers and give them the tools they need to be able to capture as much value as possible without the need of the traditional music industry. I also have a publishing company called Confessions Music Publishing. And I recently launched a Japanese arm of that because I suppose I can say this here because this isn't going to be particularly public. I'm trying to future-proof myself a little bit. And, if this country goes to complete shit, I want to have an out, and Japan looks like a really good one. So if I build a business that supports Japan, my visa options should be much easier.
Take
Uh,
me, take me with you.
oh, happily. Well, I'm going on the 17th of November if you want to come then. Um, that's not for good, that's just for vacation. But I also am a published author. I have one book published already, which is called 12 Steps to Successful Leadership, which is about using the 12 steps of recovery to help you become a more authentic and emotionally intelligent leader in the workplace. And I am in the final processes of editing the second book, which is 12 Steps to Success, Finding Your Purpose, which is much broader application for people. And it does exactly what it says on the tin. It uses the 12 steps to help you find your purpose in life, and be able to then live your life with purpose. I've been in the music industry for more than 25 years now, for my sins. And I still love it. Even though we're in this like weird period of flux, I still really love what we get to do. And the thing I love most, there's two things actually that I really love most. One is being able to help creators because I do not have a creative bone in my body. So they have saved my life many, many times with the work that they do. But I do know how to make them a lot of money. So that always drives me. But the other thing is, I don't know, I really just love what we get to do because it makes me feel like I'm helping someone. And the extension on that is that I love the people side of every job, especially every corporate job I've ever had. So being able to kind of work with teams of people and help develop people to see them become the best version of themselves. And that's why I really wanted to offer up my services to do this webinar today about vibe coding, because I know it's a tool that could help a lot of people, and giving my time to others to help them learn a new skill is just very aligned with my purpose. And so without further ado, what is vibe coding? Which is a very valid question. So basically, vibe coding is building apps or websites, but using AI. And so it's utilizing modern tools that let you describe what you want to build. Um, and it really is as simple as that, because you don't need to be technical at all in order to do any of this. For me, one of the things that has always fascinated me is code. And I was always really like envious, I suppose, to a degree, of developers because they could speak this magical language that could make these things happen. And it just seemed so alien to me. And so basically, it's AI plus templates plus intuition. That is all vibe coding is. It is no more complicated than that. And so if you can describe it, you can build it. And as we kind of get into the demo, you will see exactly what I mean by that. Because one of the beauties of vibe coding is it's really about using natural language and just speaking to this AI tool in the way you would have a conversation with a friend. And trust me, there have been times where I've been swearing at my AI tool, and it apologizes profusely. Um, and then I apologize to it because I'm British, so it's a weird spiral. Um, but why do vibe coding? For me, vibe coding was it was a solution to a problem, and the problem was a lack of money. I when I left Warner's, that was 3.5 years ago now. I had a nice settlement, and I put that money into my tech company, and I was paying developers, and I was doing all this stuff, and I just burnt through all my money. And then I got to the stage where I really needed to keep moving forwards with certain projects that I was working on, but didn't have the money to continue incurring these like huge rolling subscription costs with SaaS platforms. And I started to kind of read a lot about vibe coding, and I saw it as a possible path forwards to kind of help me cut back on some of my costs. Um, and so I thought I'd just give it a go. The whole point for me of vibe coding is I can now build a tool in a really short amount of time that allows me to do a process or create something, a tool that's necessary for my workflow. Um, I can do it all myself. I don't need to pay someone an exorbitant amount of money for this one part of a tool that they offer. Um, and it allows me to move a lot quicker, because the other thing is being in corporate, as I'm sure many of you either are aware of or have been aware of, the process you have to go through to get anything approved is a nightmare. The hoops you have to jump through is soul crushing. And so for an entrepreneur, independent business people, it's so much easier to just go, well, I need this tool now. I don't need to go through all these approvals processes to get budget signed off and justify the business reason. Because if this is going to save me time and money, I can just build it and then move on. So my experience of vibe coding so far, like I say, I've been vibe coding for a while now, since kind of the probably the beginning of the year. So it's still not that long, but in AI years, which, I feel like if dog years are one to every seven, AI years is like one to every 100. Um, so like I'm an old timer in this sense. But for me, I used Cursor more than anything. And so I set myself this project recently called One a Week. And with One a Week, the goal was to build one tool that was useful every week. over the space of a month. Just to really challenge myself and see what I could deliver within those kind of time constraints. And so the first one, it is not pretty, but it was basically a Spotify playlist analyzer. So I pull in through the Spotify API playlist IDs. It identifies all of the songs within there. It breaks out who the artists are, what their popularity score is, and then it breaks out lots of additional information around the tracks themselves. Then I kind of took it one step further and built out a catalog search within there so I could use key terms to find different types of songs from within Spotify's catalog. And then also an artist intelligence portal that would allow me to put the artists that I work with within my publishing company. I could put their Spotify URIs in there and it would give me a whole bunch of analytics. It would also pull through lots of similar artists from various different data points from around the internet. And also it would look at kind of trending conversations across social media metrics as well. So this was just the first one. And like I say, it is ugly. She is not a pretty baby, but she's smart and she does some interesting things. And that was the first tool that I built, and it was just kind of a fun project to see what I could do incorporating the Spotify API. The next thing was a data processor, and I've talked about this with some people before. I did one of my writer distributions last quarter that it took me 6 hours of manipulating data with Excel. And this is a really good example of something that has an immediate value in terms of time saving. And time saving obviously means money saving. So this allows me to now do my writer distributions within 20 minutes. And it took 45 minutes to code it. So basically, when I get distribution statements in from various third parties, I pull them into this. It then batch combines those into a file that allows me to export it into my admin platform that then runs the processing. And then from here, I can create a file that can be loaded into my writer portal to be able to notify my writers of the distributions. And so, like I said, it was like a 6 hour process of messing around with Excel, which is soul crushing, which then was taken down to 20 minutes. So I'm really looking forward to doing my next writer distribution, which should be next week. And it taking no time at all. And it allows me to pay my writers faster. So everyone wins in this. Then the next one I did was this kind of tool. I will also apologize for some of the titles on them because the vibe code platforms decide to name things and they're not how I would name it. But again, it's just a tool for me, so I don't really care what it's called. Um, this one was tied to Instagram because for my book Instagram page, there was an awful lot of kind of dead accounts that I was following and kind of bot accounts that had just kind of that were there. And so I needed to have a way to be able to cross-reference who I was following, who was following me back, and identifying kind of the problematic accounts that I could then unfollow. And so this allows me to combine two data sources and it creates an output that gives me links to be able to go straight into Instagram to unfollow a page. Because Instagram, as anybody that lives within Instagram or any of the Meta products, will know that if you batch any kind of process or automate anything, it gets flagged and you potentially can get banned for life. And so this was the easiest way to kind of build a process flow without being in breach of their terms and conditions. So again, it's a very, very functional tool that just helps me do an awful lot of work much, much quicker than I previously would have before. And then finally, going back to Japan for a second, I built this tool called Ukio, which um, I am not to toot my own horn. Apparently, according to Duolingo, I'm really, really good at Japanese. However, if you ask me, I'm really good at the game of Duolingo. And actually having a conversation with someone in Japanese brings up all the fear of screwing up the words and not getting it right and then overthinking things. And so I built this chatbot that allows you to have a free-flowing back and forth conversation in Japanese. And it uses Google Voice to be able to process the language aspects of it. So me speaking to it and it speaking to me. It uses ChatGPT to do the actual translations, and then the way that the translations are presented on screen, you'll see that it has three different lines. And so Japanese specifically is a very difficult language to learn because of the fact it has multiple different alphabets. And so the difference between kana, which is phonetic, and kanji, which are much more kind of conceptual. And so, they're pictograms. So many different tools. When you try and speak to it in Japanese, it will give you the kanji back. But the problem I had was like, I can't read kanji. I'm terrible at reading kanji. However, I can read the phonetics. And so what it actually gives is the first line is true Japanese mixing kana and kanji. The second line is totally phonetic using kana, and then the third line is in English. So if you are like the second block of words that says Nihon, which is Japan. But if I didn't know that that kanji was Nihon, then below I could see this, the beginning of the second says Nihon in phonetic, but below I can also see that, you know, while Japanese in terms of sentence structure is kind of back to front and slightly difficult to follow for an English person, I know that that means Japanese. So you can kind of reverse engineer what it means. And this has helped me become much more comfortable with speaking Japanese. And it's just a tool, again, that I built for me. And it probably has some kind of value to somebody else if I packaged it up and sold it as a product. Um, but I just built this for me because it was helpful and it was a real problem that I was facing. And so it was just one a week. Um, on top of that, I've done some much larger scale projects. So firstly, I completely redid all of my web presence. So my various different business verticals were all on different URLs, and it was a real pain in the ass to manage. And so I actually decided to bring everything into one portal. And so, you have the landing page, there's a page for my publishing company, which has uh, a feed of my writers within it, and I can kind of change those writers in the back end admin portal and kind of move things around as I see fit, given if they have like new releases that I want to promote or anything. My blog page is there. It talks about Imber and my consulting work. The the bottom right hand one I wanted to include as an example though, because that's an ebook which is kind of tied in with my book stuff. And the ebook process here was completely built using vibe coding. So I incorporated Square to do the payment transactions. I used Zapier to be able to automate the delivery of the content once somebody had bought it. And then there's a kind of process flow beyond that that does upsells to different content around my book as well. And so for me, this website now is like a fully functioning e-commerce vehicle. And then at the back end, there's an admin portal where I can add in all my blog posts. I can change anything to do with the books or my publishing company. And I also have a security monitor built in as well, so that I can see if there's been any kind of like web attacks from bots, and I can block those as and when they're happening. And so it's really fully functioning. And what would have cost me a lot of money to have a designer build something like this, especially a complete content management system in the back end, and then pay to maintain it. This took me probably 2 weeks of my life to get it right, and it costs me ongoing $5 in hosting costs a month, and then my Cursor subscription is $20 a month. And like that's nothing in the grand scheme of things. So it's a real cost saver. Then in addition to that, I also built out my publishing admin platform, which is based off of Django. And so, but I had to kind of make some changes to the code to be able to streamline CWR exports and ACK file imports, which anybody who's in the publishing space will know what I'm talking about. Everybody else will be like, what the fuck is he talking about? And that's totally fine. But then I also built out my writer portal. So my writers can now log into this. This is all kind of test data right now that you're seeing. But within this portal, I can add in a joint distribution statement of all of the earnings for my catalog, and it automatically separates everything out. And it appears in each writer's individual portal. Writers can do registrations, catalog amendments, they get royalty analytics, everything is kind of within this. And again, that probably took me 2 to 3 weeks to build that out. And it's just a much easier way for me to communicate with my writers. So all of this saves me time and money. So going back to vibe coding in general, there are three key ways to vibe code. So there's no code, AI assisted coding, and low code. So no code is basically visual drag and drop. So it's like, I like this container, this image, I'm going to move that from here to there, and you just like drag things around a page. And it's a very, very easy way to do it because it does create a fully functioning platform, but you don't have to worry about kind of margin coding or any of the additional things that a UX designer would have to think about. AI assisted coding is really where you ask an AI to write something for you. And another way that AI assisted coding can work is you can actually have a tool like ChatGPT teach you to code. And so that you can actually just like use that to build the code out. And then you can copy that into a platform like VS Code to then push it into production so that it's live. And then low code is kind of, you can add code in, and it helps you kind of edit the visual aspects of things. So for no code, there's a whole bunch of platforms like Bubble, Glide, Adalo, etc. I've included Airtable and Zapier in there because they are kind of much more drag and drop services. And so there's an awful lot of AI that sits behind those tools, and they're really, really good as kind of back end support for anything that you can vibe code. AI assisted coding, Lovable. We're going to get to Lovable in a bit, or shortly. Replit, Base 44, Codium, Cursor, and like I said, GitHub, OpenAI Codex, Gemini Code Assist. Those are ones that you can actually just have a back and forth dialogue with to help it teach you how to code, or at least kind of give you the ability to understand what the certain code is doing. And then the low code tools are there's a list of I'm personally not a massive fan of low code because it feels a bit clunky. And anybody that's used HubSpot Web Designer will understand what I mean by that because it is helpful to a degree, but it kind of locks you in to a very defined structure that's really, really difficult to kind of move around from. Whereas no code is much more fluid, and AI assisted coding, really, you are just saying to it, I don't like this, do this instead, and it will recode that for you. So this is where I crap myself because we're going to see how this goes. So I'm going to be using Lovable. Lovable is the fastest growing company in the world right now, which I was with some of the team from Lovable recently at a hackathon, and we were just chatting away, and it's so inspiring to see how they approach this because so many kind of coding platforms really view themselves as platforms that are there to help people who already know how to code, just to kind of speed up their workflow and make things kind of more effective for them and more efficient. Whereas Lovable look at this as this is about a tool that you give to anyone to empower them to make something happen. And so they're all about working with underserved communities and really helping to push a lot more kind of like civic tracks to really help people engage with their community and build things that are practical and usable within a short space of time. So what we are going to build is a simple link in bio landing page. So something like Linktree with a few kind of really basic things on the page. That's the plan. Let's see how this goes. So bear with me. I need to stop this screen share. Um, do, do, do. Um, and then this is where it gets really dodgy because I'm about to do the one thing I always tell people never do, which is I'm going to share my entire desktop. So Share screen. Okay. So this is Lovable. Lovable is, like I say, it's a really, really intuitive tool. And as an example, after I was a judge and mentor at this hackathon recently up in Richmond, I decided to put myself under the same conditions that the people at the hackathon were under. And I built myself a nice little site here. And so you won't be able to see the landing page of it. But so this is a tool called Romo, um, which is a play on words, as it's homos who roam. And so the idea is basically connecting queer-friendly spaces around the world, and giving people a tool that allows them to find places when they're traveling, be able to understand kind of if there are language barriers. So, if again, Japan is a great example where you might have a bar or a club called something, but what you understand that word to mean and the signage on the place, they don't connect. And so it's very, very difficult to find the place you're looking for. So it kind of helps with that. It's also the plan with it is to allow people to sign up as guides so that they will kind of show people around their local city when people are visiting. And so it's a real community that is trying to build. There's a message board on there that people can ask questions. And then one of the things that is super interesting is I did this tool where it pulls all of the legal information around LGBTQIA rights around the world and basically rates countries. And so it kind of gives you an idea of kind of what what the situation is, and it kind of pulls detailed information for you as well and gives you local resources just in case you need anything when you're there. So that I did in about 3 hours, and it was a super fun project. But what I'm going to do now is build out this link in bio page. So first things first, I really like to use ChatGPT for this because the best way that I vibe code is to basically use a tool like ChatGPT to brainstorm out what it is that I actually want to build and then have it create the right prompt to put into a tool like Lovable or Cursor or whatever else you're using. So to speed up time, I do, 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 did this. I created the prompt to go into ChatGPT. So basically it's saying, please don't code anything, because that's the other thing is if you ask it for some kind of code, it will start to like do the coding for you, and that isn't what we want. So I just want to brainstorm an idea with you on how best to structure the code and design for the following application. I'd like to build a link in bio style page which can be used on Instagram and other social media platforms for a recording artist. Then it gives the kind of the information that it would need on the page. I talk about it being web first, but mobile optimized, so it can work across different platforms. And then I just give it a rough idea about styling. So I want it to have a dark background and use interesting pops of color for the highlights. Then the artist information I just put there so it can start to work on that already. And I'd also like it to be something that utilizes modern design elements like Shadcyan, Aceternity, and Tailwind. Those things are technical. They're helpful because it tells the code where to look for design inspiration. So please give me a suggested structure for how it would look and the best way to incorporate all of these items. So we ask, so then it gives me a structure of how it thinks I should approach it. Wow, ChatGPT is running slow today. Um, Please give me that prompt. I can use in Lovable for it to do the build. Okay, don't know wasting that. Send that. And so there's typos in there. I don't care about that. It's pretty good at working its way around the typos and it understands. So then it's giving me that. So that's the prompt that it wants me to put into Lovable. So let me copy that and go back to Lovable. So one thing I will say about Lovable, so I currently have 8.3 credits left. Every time you ask Lovable to do something, it uses credits, and depending on what you're asking it to do, it uses credits of differing volumes. Um, what I tested over the weekend, this build, start to finish, took next to nothing. I think it took like about 1.7 credits. And so you can sign up to Lovable for free, and it gives you 5 credits a month. And then, or 5 credits a day, sorry. And then if you pay, it gives you 100 credits for a month plus 5 credits a day. And that's like $20 a month. So let me give Lovable this and then send that. So now Lovable is basically starting to do all the work in the background. So one of the things that is very different with Lovable and kind of more extensive platforms like Cursor is Lovable doesn't show you what it's doing. It just kind of gives you some of its thought process as it goes. And so it's helpful, but you don't see the code that it's writing. So where it's saying here, editing index CSS, that's actually building the index file for the app. And so you don't really see much of what's going on Lovable until it actually spins up the preview. The big difference from a visual perspective with Lovable and more extensive platforms like Cursor is that Lovable will show you the tool in browser. Whereas if I build something using Cursor, and I have a video that I'll show you in a little bit of Cursor working, um, you kind of have to jump around places to kind of see it, whether that's kind of stored locally on your device or if it's been pushed to a production environment, which is where it lives in the cloud and you can actually access it through a proper URL. And so, this is doing its thing still. And it's telling me, it's generating the hero image for the top of the page for Awich, the artist. There's a recurring theme here. Awich is a Japanese hip hop artist, so again, Japan. Um, but it's doing its thing, and I think with it generating the hero image, it probably doesn't have that long left. Um, one other thing, just to kind of give you a tip on for anything that you decide to build, AI tools are really, really good at analyzing images. And so, for instance, if I wanted to say, um, what do I want to do? Analytics, dashboard, examples, and then go to images, and I get all of these. So say I'm building something and I need it to have an analytics dashboard attached to it. I could go through this and say, oh, actually, I really like that one. And so I could save that to my computer. And then within the chat component of Lovable or whatever tool you're using, you can add that image in and say, make this part of the platform look like this. And it will actually analyze the image and identify the various different blocks that are in there and apply those blocks to the code that it's building for you as well. So you can do that across anything, whether that's logos, because they all use logo generation. Oh, does that mean it's coming? Okay. So here is our link in bio page for Awich, Queen of Japanese Hip Hop. So there's a biog page, there's images. That's definitely not Awich, but um, this always makes me laugh. If ever you ask any kind of AI tool to embed a YouTube video, it rickrolls you. Um, I think it's hilarious that AI has a sense of humor, or at least the developers that built it have a sense of humor. Um, and so looking at this, okay, so it's doing that. There's merch. And then there's links to all the various different streaming platforms and everything. And so as you can see on the bottom left, as I move, that actually is the correct information. And so this is it. So this again goes to the Awich merch store. And so that is everything. So say I want to change that and actually put a specific Awich video in. Change the YouTube video to the latest a witch post from a YouTube page. So then it thinks. So now it's looking at her YouTube page um, to try and find the embed code. Okay, yep. Bad Bitch is the latest one. I know that for a fact. And so then it's reprocessing the page. Okay, and so this is pulled up. That isn't actually the video I thought it was. So let me go to YouTube, which okay, so actually this one is the latest. So let me go with this.
It's my last semester in university.
Congratulations for your last semester. If I take that code, actually, that's the wrong video. It's the one I want. So again, typos, but doesn't matter. It will know what I'm actually suggesting. So now it's updating the video part of this link in bio to the one that I actually want it to be. And there we go. Butcher shop is there. So the last thing that I just want to check is can you confirm where the user sign up information is stored when they add an email to stay connected? Because sometimes what it will do is it will build out the front end, but it won't actually connect with the back end piece. And so depending on how it's structured, there's a variety of different ways that you can actually do it. And so yeah, here it says it's actually not storing any data right now. And it gives you an example of what the code is. Um, so should I implement a proper email capture system for you? Yes, please. Let's see it do that. Okay, so allow. Don't know what it's doing, but it sounds right. Also, so far, like, you know, that's used a minimal number of credits for this. Okay, so now it's modifying the database. So once this is all done, it would allow me to, so database table to store email subscribers. Okay, create that database. One of the things that's going on right now is like every single step it's asking me to approve that I am happy that it's doing certain things. When I work with Cursor, I run it in this thing called agent mode, and agent mode basically just like goes off to the races and does it all. It's a double-edged sword because sometimes it can run ahead and program things in a way that isn't necessarily what I want it to do, and I have to backtrack a little bit. But for the smaller things, it's much easier because otherwise you're saying yes to absolutely every single step in the process. So it kind of takes a while. So now it's created the database. There's error handling in there. There's data storage. So if I go here, Eric, input.co, join the family. Success. You've joined A, which is mailing list. And that, in God knows how long that took, is how you build something. And the last stage of that is actually kind of like you click publish and it hosts it on Lovable's own domain. And then you can just put that link in your bio so that you can kind of see, whatever is, you can direct your audience to see it through whatever social platform you want to use. And so going back to the presentation. So yeah. Right. So I talked a lot about Cursor as well. And so I just wanted to show you the same. thing that we just did, but using Cursor. So caveat number one, Cursor I find is much better for heavy lifting. So it's much more extensive um, projects that you're working on. Lovable is amazing for things that are like really easy, straightforward, and quick to do. But Lovable does have a kind of a very similar look. You can, once you've played around with Lovable for a while and you start to see other things that people have done, you can kind of tell Lovable projects from a mile away because they all have this very similar feel to them. Um, Cursor, when it spits out original code, it isn't the sexiest, so you have to do an awful lot of design work to make it more interesting, but the kind of back end functionality is much more robust in general, I find. So, same thing, took the prompt, put it into ChatGPT. It gave me everything it wanted to tell me how it should be structured. So again, I ask it to give me the exact prompt put into Cursor. And so it does that. It actually gave a project route which split out the prompt. So I have to take it into three different sections and put it into Cursor. And then Cursor just starts to run through and do its thing. So I ask it to deploy it to Heroku because that's the cloud-based server that I use, so that it's hosted somewhere online. Again, big difference between things like Cursor and um, Lovable is Lovable hosts things for you. So this is the first version that it threw up. Um, the image for Awitch didn't come through, but it actually says in the next steps that I need to provide an image for it. And so I just go off to Google, find an image. I like this one, save that. Then I look at where it tells me it needs to be saved. So it's in the static folder. So I just drag and drop into static and it's there. Then I tell it what it's called, and then it needs to update the code to include it. So then it does that, and it's added the image in. Now I realize that actually there's an issue with the YouTube video embed. I tell it there's an error in there. I needed to go back and check what the error was. Um, and so it then tries to incorporate the video as I originally asked it to, but it didn't do it. It did it in a way that it was like a click out to YouTube. So same thing as before. I went to YouTube, I got the link to the video that I wanted, and there we go. It's in the platform. So again, you can see that the basic image structure for Cursor isn't as good as Lovable. And so I'd have to do quite a bit of design work on kind of making it more fluid. And so again, email capture, I asked it. This one actually already was saving things within the platform. And so I do that and success. All right. So that's Cursor, and I love Cursor. Um, but a large part of okay, sorry. Now my boyfriend's dog has woken up. So if you hear a Boston Terrier in the background, that's what it is. I apologize. I love Cursor because it gives me a lot more flexibility. But for most projects, especially kind of really simple tools like a link in bio tool, um, I would go to Lovable for that, hands down. So now back to general discussions around this. So I want you to have a think about kind of how this could appear in your day-to-day kind of workflow. Um, and one of the key things is really understanding like what are your goals? So maybe it's building a simple website, building apps or tools, learning to code, or automating processes, and then really think about which is the appropriate tool to use for it. So like websites, while I built mine in Cursor, um, it was much easier to do that because I knew I wanted to manage the entire end-to-end flow, including the commerce aspect. And so being able to incorporate Square's API into it meant I needed to have much more kind of granular access to the code than using something like Webflow or Framer. but Lovable Cursor, great for apps and tools. And so just have a think about kind of what's the right tool that you could use and just do some research on it. One of the other things that I find is really great is if I have a couple of different tools that I don't know are right, I will just ask AI to give me a complete breakdown of the pros and cons of each of the tools. I will tell it what I'm trying to do and ask it for advice on which it thinks is the most appropriate one. And so just some ideas like, Beat Journal, log in music ideas and voice memos, an event promo page, discography hub, which I think like is really helpful for a lot of independent artists because being able to pull through all of your songs and embed streaming links into one place and have full control over that portal is really useful. Data collection with direct to fan, smart link generators for new releases. There's limitless ways of doing this. And because there are limitless ways, I have a challenge for you all. And so this is the 7 day challenge. Should you wish to accept it, and I really hope you do, I want you to pick one idea, just one. This is kind of going back to my one a week thing. Um, Use an LLM or no code tool to build the first version of your idea within a week. And it sounds daunting, but as you can see with what I did with Lovable before, you can actually build something really quick and really easily. Um, then I know most of you are going to be with Lone Wolves already, and so share it with Lone Wolves, or if you're not, share it with potential users and get some feedback. Then use the tools that you were using to build the first version to make version 2, and then rinse and repeat. Keep going through that cycle to make it better and better and better so that you have a tool that is fit for purpose. And so if you are with Lone Wolves, I'd love you to share your ideas in the Slack channel, which I created earlier today, which is hashtag vibe coding. And I am really looking forward to seeing kind of what people come up with. And so, with that, do we have any questions? Let me comment on this. Silence.
I've got one.
Go for it, Nicole.
All right. So I think like a lot of people have a hard time figuring out like where that tool is a good idea like to create. Like where do you start? So I'm curious, like, do you have, I know you said like Lovable and Cursor, but like in between those, you did have a slide that had a lot of other ones. Could you maybe run through just maybe some of the other tools and kind of what you like or don't like about them?
Yeah, so let me just have a look at the list. Um, so I've used a lot of them. My very first kind of intro into vibe coding was actually using ChatGPT as code support. And so I was going back and forth with ChatGPT asking it to help me build out a platform, and I was copying the code into VS Code, which is like a standard developer platform. Um, and within VS Code, when I would then run that to see how the platform was looking, if there were errors, I'd have to figure out where the error was happening. And so ChatGPT was really helpful in teaching me the building blocks of like how coding works and what to look for when things are wrong. But my first real attempt at actually building something out was using Bubble, which is one of the no code ones. Bubble is super fun. It's really easy. It's really straightforward. Pretty much anybody can just pick it up and just get running with it. Um, Base 44 is very similar to Lovable. Replit is the same as Lovable, but it's kind of more codey, I suppose, is one way of describing it. Because a lot of developers will use a platform like Replit because it's less polished looking. Cursor is my go-to. Many people will have had experience with things like Wix, or even Squarespace, which are kind of no-code tools, that allow you to kind of build things by just dragging and dropping certain blocks. Um, I have never been a fan of those because again, I feel like a lot of websites end up looking the same. And then another kind of path I went down for a while was using Salesforce and HubSpot. And they are not user friendly for everyday people. And so they're cumbersome and they're built for salespeople first and foremost. And so the actual kind of like user interface is kind of complicated for your everyday user. And that's why I always go back to things like Lovable and Cursor, is because it's much easier to just like hit the ground running with those platforms. Another great thing with Lovable is you can actually see projects that other people have built and you can use those as a form of inspiration. Um, and to the original point that you made about like figuring out kind of what to build or like the problems to fix, um, there's there's a process you can go through in terms of identifying problems in your workflow. But the most obvious thing for me is if something feels overtly manual and is taking you a long time to do it, there's probably an AI tool that you can build to speed that up. The extension on building tools in platforms like these are, and I kind of struggle to say this a little bit, but AI agents are a really interesting thing to play around with. Um, because they literally will take over every step of your process and do it for you. The thing that makes me nervous with AI agents is you have to hand over basically full access to everything that is on your computer. And there are kind of no checks and balances around how these things work. And so there's an awful lot of uncertainty in my mind, anyway, at least, of how secure our own data is with agents. And so as a good example, which will apply to everybody, say you built an AI agent that was going to help you plan a vacation, and you gave it all of your access to your accounts on things like booking.com or like your Delta app, and so it could book flights for you. And but you also gave it access to your banking information so it could make the transactions. The idea of giving an unchecked tool all of my like credit card information so it can go and spend on my behalf. I do a good enough job of spending my own money like a lunatic. I don't need an AI agent to do that for me. Um, but generally I would just go back to the idea that if you are spending a lot of time doing something and it feels manual, there is a way to build out that. And so you can then start to break down the steps of the process, put those steps into a tool like ChatGPT and just say, okay, I need to build a tool that helps fix this problem. Let's brainstorm a way to do that. And then have that back and forth dialogue with ChatGPT. And once it's kind of giving you, or other coding platforms, Claude or whatever, like once it's given you a structure that you think is right, then ask it to write the prompt for you and then put that in your AI tool to build it. And I think that's the easiest way, is like you don't even need to know what the solution is. You just need to know the problem and then have that back and forth dialogue to be able to really work out what the correct prompt is so it can build it for you. Did that answer your question?
That's so
Or
good.
did I just ramble?
No, thank you.
Hey, Eric. Great
Hey.
presentation. Achim here. Hi, how's it going?
Good.
So good to see you. And this is excellent. Thank you so much. I also have been dabbling a little bit in vibe coding, and some of the tools that you presented on today are completely new to me. So thank you very much. I have a question about, at what stage are you using vibe coding versus actual developers, right? I mean, a lot of the developers now use some sort of like assisted coding, etc. But and as you have built out your own platform, obviously in the publishing world, um, the question that I have is, you know, if you are more of like you have an idea and you want to commercialize it, and you obviously want to show something, it feels to me that vibe coding is definitely the way to go, because you don't have to lay it out to developers that charge you thousands of dollars, and then have to go through some sort of like process, but you just like do it yourself, and then you get a feel for it. But have you come across platforms, or are we there yet, where we basically say like, okay, maybe if someone else on my team who also is a curious mind but not a full-fledged developer, and we vibe code this all the way to the end, and it's becoming a full-fledged product? Is that already possible? Or do you actually need developers to make sure that the architecture is right, that any kind of integration is right, also from a legal standpoint, etc.? Pepe.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So we are there where you can have full functioning production level platforms that have been fully vibe coded. One of the
Hmm.
things that actually kind of got me started on this journey was I read an article at the very end of last year where somebody in the VC space was quoted as saying, I don't think it's long before we have our first unicorn that is a truly vibe coded platform and that
Hmm.
doesn't have any staff. And so the idea that a company could be worth $1 billion without having any infrastructure costs or any headcount was really interesting to me. And that's kind of what got me thinking about, if this is possible,
Hmm.
then it's completely transformative. To your point about like the security aspect of it, so one of the things when you build larger scale products, um, so if I use my writer portal as an example, the very first version of that went live, and it wasn't something that went out to my writers. I was playing around with it in production to kind of just make sure it all worked and that all the features were
Hmm.
there and it was pulling things through correctly. Um, and I had all test users in there.
Hmm.
What I realized was that where it was saving all the user information was front end. And so if somebody looked through the code, they could have found
They could
everybody's
see it.
like passwords and everything. And so one of the things that has been an interesting dialogue online from developers, especially, is developers don't like people like me doing this because they're like, the code is ugly, it's cumbersome, it's bloated, it's not beautiful code. And there is a sense of, coders judge each other by how beautiful their code is and how efficient it runs and all these things. Vibe coding is like the car crash of codes. It will get you there and it will do it, but like it is ugly to look at. Because we're kind of putting fixes on fixes on fixes. And so
Mhm.
I believe that you can get a fully functioning platform if you are asking it the right questions and you're making sure that it's checking from a security standpoint, that user information and passwords aren't exposed publicly. Um, I think it's really, really important that you have those dialogues with the AI. But the reality is, when something is fully live, it is going to need some real developers at some point to make sure
Mhm.
that the code is streamlined, that it is manageable, that it's scalable. Because what I've built, I know it can handle a lot, but there is going to come a point where it will probably fall over and it's beyond my capability to be able to fix it.
Mhm.
But being able to kind of get to that stage first and foremost, it would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to build the platforms that I've built. And
Right.
it's cost me is time and some minor subscription fees. Um, and some kind of small maintenance fees going forwards. Like for
Mhm.
the writer portal, um, and my website, they're on standalone cloud dynos. Dynos are basically where you host the platform, and within Heroku, which is what I use to host all my applications, there's different types of dynos that allow different amounts of usage. Um, the ones that the portal and the website are on are always live, so they're never ever down, so people can go on them and there's no lag time whatsoever. All the others are on what Heroku call eco dynos, which they only turn on when you go to it. And if you don't use it for half an hour, it puts it to sleep. So there's a slight lag before it comes on. But for me to have eco dynos, it cost me $5 a month, and I can host basically all of my apps on there
That's
that I
awesome.
only use every once in a while because I don't need them to be immediately available. If there's a 1 second delay before it comes back online, that doesn't bother me. Like I
Mhm.
said with the example of the data processor that I built, that's already saving me 5 hours and 40 minutes per distribution cycle. If I have to wait a minute, well, a second, sorry, for it to come back online, I think I'll live.
Mhm. Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe because you're a lawyer, I have a question for you. Um, that's important. The the created output, is it fully your copyright?
Uh, so I would say no.
Okay.
It depends. So there's certain elements of the code that I would say are copyrightable, but
Mhm.
where a platform is just going off of what I'm telling it to do and it's building the whole thing, and I'm not really having any like interface with the actual code itself, it's probably hard to argue that I wrote that and I have a literary copyright over the code, or even to an extent design copyright over layouts and
Mhm.
functionality. Um,
Mhm.
so that's another reason why for some of the bigger things that I've been building, I have wanted to be a lot more hands-on so I can justify that there has been human interaction with that and that I have actually kind of built a lot of those things out myself. So that there is some defensibility in there. But broader copyright implications, this very much sits in a gray area right now.
Mhm.
And it is an interesting point because to the extent that if somebody is investing $3 million in an AI artist, but it's questionable how much of that AI artist's output is copyrightable, it's the same here. It's like, okay, so
Mhm.
somebody's
Mhm.
built a company that theoretically on paper could be worth $1 billion using vibe coding, but
Mhm.
if they're selling that company, what are they selling? At that
Right.
point, you hope they're selling the user base and that it's the value in those kind of customers, that's what you're selling, as opposed to the code that sits underneath it. But realistically, how much defensibility is there if somebody comes and replicates your product like line by line of the code, which they could do in theory? So
Right.
I don't know, it's untested. But for most people, I think it's going to be interesting to see what people build.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Any more for any more? I probably should look at the chat because I haven't
Have some
once.
in the chat. Yeah. Mark asks, how steep is the learning curve?
So it depends. Which is there's nothing says I'm a lawyer like answering it depends. Um, it can be quite steep if you want to get really, really deep into the weeds of things and really understand kind of how the code is working. Um, I found that very helpful because when it comes to bug testing, it's been much easier for me to be able to identify kind of issues within the code by looking at the console within the browser to see kind of where code is failing when things are loading up. Um, so that was quite a steep learning curve for me. But as I showed with the Lovable demo, if you don't want to read what the output is that it's giving you in the chat, you can just click and click and click, and it will still give you what you want at the end of it. So it doesn't have to be particularly steep. Um, the more complex the project you're working on, it's probably better if it's a slightly steep learning curve because then you're much more hands-on with the kind of the infrastructure of how things operate so that when something does go wrong, because it always does, by the way. Like I have launched things that have been working perfectly, and then the next time I go back to it, for some reason it doesn't work. And so being able to kind of go in and see the code and see where something is failing, and then have that chat with the AI to be like, I can see that online such and such of the code in this part of the platform, it's causing a 404 error or something like that. Like I'll pull those errors from the code. Um, that helps me fix things. But for simple things, you don't really need to get that involved in it. And most things that I think people will find valuable are going to be simple. Um, it's great that there could be this like billion-dollar company that's been vibe coded, but I think the most value is going to come from people just fixing simple things in their day-to-day journey and helping them speed up their process. This is the thing. I honestly think that people who can vibe code, this will be their superpower going forwards because it will remove those hurdles and those frustrations of if you're like me, repetitive admin is soul destroying and I just never ever want to do it. So if I can build a tool that will do the repetitive admin for me and then I can do what I need to with the output of that, then it will make me move much quicker because the idea of sitting down and finding X amount of time for admin and I'm like, nope, hate it, not gonna do it.
That's awesome. Nicole says that she has built something in Slack, so she's gonna share something in Slack. What else?
Yay.
Oh, Melissa is asking any recommendations on newsletters or sites to follow to stay current on AI tools.
So there are a couple that I find really helpful. So the the biggest one that I think is a must for everyone is called Superhuman. And it's written by a guy called Zane Khan. Let me see if I can put something in the chat. Interesting, it doesn't have a share. So I feel like it's tied to Superhuman, the email platform, but it's just like not actually part of. It's not just about that. It's very much about all of the goings on in AI. Yeah, you'll have to Google it, but Superhuman by Zane Khan, which is Zainkahn. Um, every day I read that in the morning. And it always gives me really interesting ideas as well because it has a lot of news kind of updates about what's going on in the space. But it also talks about kind of things that are trending on social media around AI. It gives you suggestions on different tools that you can use for different types of productivity. And also it gives you this kind of prompting section that really helps you understand the language of prompting. So it might give you a prompt to use in ChatGPT or whatever, for like how to create a LinkedIn content schedule or how to um act as a language tutor or like all these different things. So it gives you a way of visualizing how to talk to the AI in kind of real easy to understand language. Um, and yeah, I find it really, really helpful. That's the one that is my like complete go-to. Then I also um there's a guy called Brett Goldstein who has a newsletter called Home Screen which isn't specifically AI, but it touches on AI a lot. And kind of he talks a lot about his processes and his tools. And so there's a lot of recommendations in there as well. Those two are kind of like my daily go-to, and the Future Party as well, to a degree, but that's kind of much broader across media and entertainment as well as AI. So there's got a lot of crossover with what we do as professionals with AI within the Future Party. Those are my go-tos.
Very cool. Anybody else? This has been so wonderful, Eric. You are amazing. You are an incredible human and you're so creative. And we really appreciate you sharing your talents with us. And this will be saved and shared around with the Lone Wolves community. So if you haven't joined us, please make sure you join us. And I'm sure Eric is always in the chat. So I'm sure if you have any questions, as you share your projects, because hopefully everybody will do it. I'm sure he'll be happy to share any knowledge or answer any questions you might have.